Hi everyone, I'm Neha Butcher. I'm the CEO of Atom11, ad automation software for Amazon brands and agencies. Welcome to yet another episode of AdVantage with Atom11. This is where we talk about all things Amazon. Today's episode is something that you would probably never have experienced before. This is the first time we are going to talk about a very detailed topic, and the our guest basically has called the topic as content that converts. So I think the first giveaway that I have already given you, today's topic is going to be a lot about content, of how you can improve your product detail pages. But I can assure you that this is the first time that we're going to be talking about content in a way that we're going to talk about today. So I'm not going to give away too much, like I never do. And we're just going to wait for our guest to come on stage and talk more about it. But before that, we're going to move to section one of Advantage with Atom 11. And that is what's up with Atom 11. So in this section, I actually want to call out our bid recommendation system today. At Atom11, our bid recommendation system is actually very special. Of course, we have a series of algorithms that define how we are going to help you bid on your keywords better. This recommendation algorithm takes into account a lot of things. It's basically a formula based algorithm. The algorithm takes into account, the first thing it takes into account is your target ACOS. So you actually have to set up your target ACOS for different campaigns, or a default target ACOS, which can be applied to every single campaign. With that target ACOS, we look into performance metrics like conversions and ACOS. But one thing that we look into, and is very, very specific to Atom 11, is CPC by bid ratio. CPC by bid ratio is something that tells us how drastic should the bid change be. For example, if your CPC is, let's say, $1 and your bid is $10, then do you think a small change in your bid of, let's say, 10% is going to impact your CPC in any way? No, it will not. When your CPC by bid ratio is so small, like $1 divided by 10, that is like zero point 0.1 ratio, you need drastic changes in your bid to actually make a difference to your ACOS for that specific target. When your CPC is, let's say, $1 and your bid is just 1.1, at this point, your CPC by bid is very, very high, and it doesn't really matter. I think a 10% bid change is actually going to impact your CPC. So there, you don't need as drastic a bid recommendation as you'd expect. So this is Atom 11 is the only ad automation software which relies on CPC by bid to actually tell you how drastic your bid changes should be. So yeah, that's it. That was it from my update today. We wanted to talk about our bid recommendation system, which is very, very unique in this space, and so that's a little bit from there. All right, moving to our podcast today. I have a very special guest, and I'm not going to introduce him. I think he's going to introduce himself once he's up. So let me welcome Mohammed Adil. Hey, Mohammed, how are you?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. Really, really excited to do this episode today. My name is Mohammed Aiden. I'm the co founder of AMZ Consult Canada. So, we're a boutique Amazon marketing agency. So, I've been in the Amazon world for the last like 8+ years, in the agency space for the last 5 years. Little fun facts about me. Before diving into the Amazon world, I was actually in the hospitality HR industry. I have a little boy, so I'm enjoying soaking in the new joys of fatherhood.
Very
Uh, yeah, there's a little bit about myself. But no, thank you so much
congratulations.
for having me on. Thank you.
So great. Congratulations about your baby. How old is your baby now?
He's about 15 months. Yeah.
Oh, is he already walking?
Running.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. So I know that, this 1 to 3 years of age is like the cutest age when it comes to kids. So you're going to have so much fun because until 1 year is like they don't really do anything. This just like
I
it's
know, I know. It's like now it's he's like interacting more, like you can see he's becoming like a whole person now. It's crazy the shift from like 0 to 6 months and then 6 to 9 months and then 9 months to a year. And like it just he's grows so quickly. And so I'm just trying to soak it all in. And it's like everyone always tells you, time flies with kids, and you'll snap of a finger and you'll be like, how did you get here? And honestly, like my wife and I always ask ourselves, like, how's he already like 15 months old? And who knows, tomorrow it's like 2 years old, right?
Yeah, no, I have a 4-year-old, and I can tell you that it's exact that they are right. But I don't know. I don't agree with them on the first year. The first year is really hard, at least especially for the moms, because
Yeah.
they are in this new world, and they have to discover so many different things. But
Yeah.
after 1 year, it is so, oh my God, it's just I'm happy that you're able to soak it all in.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely
Lovely.
so cute.
Lovely. All right. So, Mohammed, I think before we move on into our topic for today, I just wanted to understand a little bit more about. You said that you worked in an agency before. You've been in the Amazon space for about 8 years, and then with an agency for 5. Just wanted to know what's your story. How did you get into the Amazon world, and what propelled you into this space?
Yeah, no, good question. I think I sort of was a university student just trying to make it and just trying to do everything and see what sticks, right? I was trying drop shipping and, I was trying eBay and I just all things e-commerce related. And Amazon was sort of something that like I was always scared of. Like I think even like 8 years ago, there wasn't a lot of content out there. There wasn't a lot of people like talking a lot about how to scale on Amazon, how to grow on Amazon, how to even make Amazon accounts and stuff. So I was always scared of it. But there was one winter I was like, what, let me try selling like dog Christmas sweaters and stuff. And it did well, and it kind of started to work, but I didn't know anything that I was doing, and it was like a mess. I drove my account to the ground. Like I was logistically, it was a nightmare, and I would just unorganized, didn't know what I was doing, didn't know anything about PPC, didn't know anything about even the SEO side of things. And I really just was kind of dabbled in it a little bit more. And then at the same time, I was always balancing the full-time like hospitality HR roles. And, I never saw e-commerce as like something that I could do full-time, right? It was always that scary thing that I never was able to take that leap of faith, right? Then I kind of had an opportunity to start up with an agency that was just getting started. And I was with them while they scaled to 400 or 500 clients, and really that's where I got a big taste of my Amazon journey, right? And I was exposed to brands working in all various categories, right? Like from industrial and scientific to the handmade category to health and wellness and beauty and groceries and everything in between and pets, all of it, right? I was in all the niches, and it was really really great experience. So this year I took that I pivoted, and I started in my own agency with my partner Himanshi, and our goal is to create a more boutique agency. Thank you so much. And our goal is to create a more boutique full service agency, right? Where we can spend a little bit more time on working that, like I always like to tell all my clients that we really want to not only be an extension of your team, but we want to feel like a part of your team, right? And we want to we want to talk about things beyond even Amazon, right? Even though like that's within our scope, right? To really be successful on Amazon, you really have to kind of step back in it. Amazon is just one part of the e-commerce ecosystem, right? There's a lot of other layers that go into it so that you can be successful, right? There's a lot of external factors, right? Even down to your shipping and logistics and packaging and design, to your UGC content creation and external advertising and anything you're doing, on the Google SEO side. So what we really like to do is support our clients with figuring out a more holistic strategy, right? And figuring out how they can actually scale their Amazon business. And a lot of the people we work with are brands rather than products, right? So how could you actually grow your brand on Amazon, right? Because being a product business on Amazon, yes, you can scale, right? But what the people that we work with are brands that are trying to scale their brand on Amazon, right? And really, like, the reason we started this was we want to control a little bit more of who we work with, right? We want to work with brands that we align with, brands that get us excited, right? In categories that we feel excited about. And it's the journey has been great so far, right? So it's been a couple months of operation. We have some really, really awesome clients in our under our belt that we've been working with and have amazing relationships with. And what we're going to be talking about today is things that we apply for our clients as well, right? And how we take that extra step, right? That's what differs us from a lot of other agencies, right? Just because we are smaller on scale, we are able to, go the extra mile. Just because the way we're building, we want to be that extension, we want to be that partner of your team, right? And that's how we want to grow, and that's how we want to scale our business.
That's beautiful. I think a few things that you mentioned just caught my interest, right? Being an extension of the team. I think only boutique agencies can do that and say that because of the kind of depth that they go into when it comes to an account. So I think that'll be really interesting to follow your journey on. And another thing that you mentioned was holistic. This word is special to me because we are building Atom11 in the same way. Atom11 is a holistic um, PPC automation solution. And this is where we actually think that, hey, you know what, we want to go beyond PPC, just like you want to go beyond Amazon when it comes to building someone's brand. We want to go beyond PPC so that people can actually bring together multiple things and then assess how their PPC is going, right? So I think those two words are really, really special to me. And kudos, and I can only wish you luck while you're building AMZ Consult. Awesome. So you mentioned that today, and of course, the topic of our conversation is content that converts. Now, I've been in the space for a long time. A lot of times what happens is that people, they chase traffic. So they want to chase new traffic, they want to chase new customer acquisition, and so they will design a lot of good ads. They will have a great main image. Recently there has been there have been some influencers in the space who talk a lot about good main image, and I think it's very, very important because that's what gives you traffic. But what happens is that they forget to focus on something which comes just after traffic, which is conversion, right? How to make good content that actually converts. We have already spoken on this podcast. We've spoken about A plus content. We've spoken about bullet points. But I think I'm sure there is something more that can be added to this whole equation of main image and bullet points and A plus content. What is that missing piece? And how do we go about it?
No, exactly. I think, like, the biggest missing piece that I think, because I follow all these influencers and a lot of these people in the space, right? And even it goes back to the reason why we started the agency, right? The biggest piece that I believe is missing is, and what I like to call it, your money shots, right? Because your main image, yes, it can bring that traffic in, right? And the main image is super important, but the money shots is what I like to call your second and your third image, because those images is those images is where you're able to actually touch on the needs and answer the relevant questions of your customer, and those images have a higher probability of influencing their purchase, right?
Mhm.
Just as much as the reviews, just as much as that's what they see before the bullets, right? The bullets are, you write them a lot, mostly for the algorithm, right? Like when you're scrolling on them on mobile, right? What do you see first, right? You see those carousel of images, right? Research has shown that, like, on those images, like, people don't get past the fourth, fifth, sixth image. They kind of like glance through it and they scroll quickly past it. But your second and your third image are really your money shots, and I don't see enough people placing enough emphasis on this, and I don't see enough testing being done on these images. Like with all of our clients that we have, we're actually A/B testing our second and third images just as much or more than our main image, right?
Wow.
Right. So we place a big emphasis on that because, like you said, that you can always chase new traffic, chase like get new people to look at your brand, which is all good, right? But there's you're probably already getting millions of impressions to your current listing, right? So I like to first try to get those impressions to my listing, try to convert those existing impressions, try to understand where we're missing the mark for those impressions, fix that, then double down on getting new traffic to the listing. And
Yeah.
then it's a repeating cycle, and we're
Yeah.
continuously doing that.
Fair enough. So I think that this is the first time ever in the history of Amazon someone has actually spoken about the second and third image. I think it is absolutely never talked about. I think it's like the third child, right? Or the middle, actually the middle child, right? Who's never really,
I understand.
never getting
Middle
attention.
child. I'm a
Oh
middle
my God,
child.
I'm so sorry.
So, middle child children, the perks. There's some perks to it, right? You kind of just slide. It's
Absolutely.
report card season when your parents are focused on the older and younger ones, and you're just sliding through, right? But no, exactly like your point, right? I think a lot of people do talk about it, but not many people, if any, place any emphasis on it, right? It's always sort of part of a presentation. It's part of bullets of a presentation. It's part of a
100%.
conversation, but I want to have a conversation just around it,
That's
right?
perfect. Let's
Exactly.
dive deep into it. What do you think is when it comes to the second and third image? What do people want to look at? Like, how can I know what should I be placing on the second image and third image? Because just a few minutes ago you mentioned, right? People just they glide by the fourth, fifth, sixth image. So second and third are important to
Yeah.
pick the interest of the customer. So how do I know what should I be putting in on the second or third image?
Yeah. No, I think like overall goals of your money shot is you want to one convey information within a glance, right? Like I like to call it my 1-2-1-2 test. So what I like to do is when I'm going through listings with my team, right? I get someone that hasn't worked on that listing. We open it up, we open each image up on the screen, and I say 1-2 switch, 1-2 switch, 1-2 switch, go through our first 2 3 maybe 4 images, and I ask them, what do you remember, what did you see, what did that convey to you? So it's really really important that like within a glance you're able to communicate information, right, at the minimum, right? Second goal is you want to speak in the language of your customer, right? So what I mean by that is like in some categories, your customers they understand technical language a little bit better. So, for example, we work with a women's health brand, right? So it's a much more educated customer, right? So in their images, we call out medical terms that they heard from their doctors, medical terms that they're researching, medical terms that they understand, medical terms that they're looking for, because it's a condition, it's something about it's there's something about their health, it's something that they take seriously, right? As opposed to if I'm selling something like, like a pen, whiteboards, or cups or whatever, right? Then the language can kind of just be, you want to fine tune your language, right? If you get a little too technical, right? So I see people that are selling cups that are usually talking specifically about the type of glass and the type of this, right? Where the customer doesn't understand that, right? So you're wasting space, you're wasting their mental energy, right? So it's about speaking the language of your customer, right? The third goal of your money shots is trying to stick to maximum like 2 features within an image. I always go on an image, like every audit that I've always done for brands, they're calling out 5 or 6 different things, right? They're overselling themselves, right? We do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. That's it's too much, right? You have if what I like to do is like think about like simple exercise that our team does is we get a whiteboard, we write down every single value proposition, right? 1 to 10, 20, whatever it may be. Then we order them in importance, right? Now, in our second, third image, we know we can just focus on, okay, A and B, right? If they care enough about A and B, you have an opportunity to dive into every other point in your A plus content, in your Q&As, in your videos, in your bullets, right? So I think a lot of sellers tend to oversell in their second and third images, thinking that it's going to help with their conversion, thinking if we just pile everything on, like it's going to, convert. But what it actually does, it overwhelms, right? People are on small screens. They're looking at, like, there's too much information on the sheet, right? And that brings me to my final point, is being mobile optimized, right? This one is something people always talk about, but I want to bring it up again and emphasize the importance, right? You want to be mobile optimized. That means, like, what fonts are you using? What colors are you using, right? How big is it, right? If it's like, sometimes people just put the bottle of maybe the supplement in the image, thinking, okay, like the information is all on the bottle anyways. They can see it's 30 count, 40 count, 90 count, whatever. They can see it's a vegan. They can see whatever that is on the second image. I don't need to call that out. I'll call something else out. But what they're not realizing is that requires maybe a zoom. So you don't want anything that's pinch to zoom, right? You want to be able to give the information without them needing to pinch to zoom, right? So those are, like, if I was to sum it up, those are the four. If you have any goals for your second and third images, those are the goals that you should have. And I can kind of share my screen and go over kind of what are some converting, like, money shots, and when are some times you're allowed to break the rule,
Yeah,
right?
sure. Do you want to go full screen?
Yeah, let's go full screen. So in terms of, like, these ones, right? Like, so for example, like, let's go over the first one. The first one is selling like it's like a children's mat, essentially, right? The main thing that they were calling out, like, this client, was that it's non-slip, and this is the main thing that was converting the best for us, right? It's, again, this one focused on that one point, right? For the second image, this was like a PlayStation 5 controller skin. So just like you put this cover on your controller, right? A big call out point for a pain point, I mean, for our customer, was making sure that, like, these things fit, right? So yes, we're pointing out a lot of different items on here, but it's, again, it all relates to that one point of just being cut perfectly for for all of the little functions, right? So that's that one message.
Wow.
For this product, it's like a topical supplement brand, but you look at this product right on the right, the main message is quick relief, right? So we have many other different things there, but again, it all ties back into quick relief. So perfect. But yeah, that's the goal, right? So how do we basically essentially make it so that your consumer does not have to think too hard, right? I think people spend so much time on overselling. You already
Yeah.
have them on your listing, right? Like, that's the biggest hurdle. Right now, they're basically ready to buy. You just have to answer their question. They're like, there's a few like, it's like they have a rubric in their head, and if you check off all their boxes, they're gonna purchase your product, right? So they if they already you can make some assumptions. If they already came to your listing, they're okay probably with the price, right? They kind of are. You can make another assumption that they have the intention to purchase something in this category, in this product line, right? So all you have to do is, what is that rubric that my customer is thinking in, and how do I get the best grade, right? So oftentimes people, like, the mistake that they make is they do answer all the questions, but in all the wrong order. So it's like, anytime, like, you're purchasing something, if it's too hard, like, Amazon has ads everywhere. They'll hop off your listing. There's an ad here, an ad here, an ad there. Like, there's ads everywhere. So anytime, like, and you as an Amazon shopper yourself as well, like, if you're looking at something and it's just not checking your first, second box, you hop off, you click an ad,
Yeah.
right? Like, Amazon ad the revenue is it's crazy, right? But that's
Yeah.
it's effective. It works, right? So I always like to say like you don't like people focus a lot on defensive ad strategies and they focus a lot on review strategies. All these things are important, right? But if you already got someone to look at your page, right? There you really have an opportunity to convert them if you understand what their pain points are, if you understand what they're thinking, and just giving them that information, right?
So now that I think I understood, this was a very visual way of telling, what should come and how to showcase a good second and third image. Now, I'm a newbie, I'm a brand. Is there a framework or something that, I can have in mind, and say, okay, if I follow these two, three things, I will be able to make a good second and third image. So, do you have something that you want to talk about there?
Yeah, let's share screen again and hop over there and I can kind of talk about that. So I like to call it my recipe, right?
Mhm.
It's a simple 3 step. I wouldn't say simple because each step can be broken down into like 200 steps, right? For the sake of this like conversation, we were going to only talk about highlights. But
Mhm.
what I like to think about is like the first part of the recipe is understanding your consumer habits online and offline. What I mean by that is like you want to know how your customers are interacting with your product, not necessarily your product, but your type of product or your niche of product or your category on and offline. So like, which basically means so so it's like if it's a supplement, how do they interact with supplements in the store? What is like what do they do? Who do they ask questions? What are they looking for? What are they reading on the packaging? What spot of the shelf are they looking at, right? So how do they interact with it at a retail level as one example, right? But it could also mean how do they interact with this product at your doctor's office, right? And that's like
Yeah.
more supplement related. But even if gifting could be, how do they react in how do in friend circles, right? When they're talking about gifts for the holidays, or in parent circles when they're talking about swaddles for their babies, like what are they talking about, right? So you can really get granular with this, and you can really like build this out like tenfold. Online habits are like what social media platforms are your consumers on? So are they on like TikTok? Are they on Pinterest? Are they on like Instagram? Are they on Meta? Like where are they? And how do they interact with those platforms or those influencers, and what do they do? What are the type of questions they're asking, right? And why are they on like Pinterest, for example, and what are they getting from Pinterest, right? And
Mhm.
how can you maybe give them that, right? So things like that. And then the second thing is like, how do we leverage Amazon tools? I think one thing that like a lot of sellers don't appreciate enough nowadays is the fact that there's a lot more first party data now. And what I mean by that is Amazon is giving us so much data now compared to
Mhm.
like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Like it's crazy how much first party data we're getting, which is crazy because that's accurate. There's people are so used to just relying on Helium 10 and Jungle Scouts and all of these other third party tools, which are great, right? And third party tools are like they're necessary, right? But how do you leverage some of the Amazon tools? Because we can't dive into all of them and kind of tie that back into your strategy. And then the final thing is consumer psychology, which I love studying this topic, and I encourage anyone who's an e-commerce seller to dive into consumer psychology. If anyone wants to book a call with me and chat about it, I love to talk about like anything consumer psychology. Um, but there's a psychology to it, right? There's theories to this, right? Like humans have been studied time and time again, right? And on the e-com space, not that there's not a lot of studies out there yet, but there's a lot of like fun and interesting research, and it's just a matter of what can you use to apply. So essentially what I like to do is I take these 3 things and I leverage each of them in a different way to kind of brainstorm what my second image will be and what my third image will be, right? So that's kind of the recipe that we use to come up with the second and third image.
That's great. I think you already touched upon a lot of like delicate points from each of these points. Can we quickly get into just examples of what do you mean when you say consumer habits and then so on and so forth. So just wanted to get into just the most important points that
Yeah,
in the interest of
let's
time.
just
Yeah.
dive right into it, right? Let's
Mhm.
dive into like obviously like I told you, like this is just a snippet, right? We don't have all the
Yeah.
time, but let's just dive. Oh, and actually, if you guys stick around, like I'll try to find a way to get to you my chat GBT prompts that I use, my storyboard and vision board templates that I use, and we'll find a way to share that with the audience today for
Lovely.
sticking and listening.
That'll be a great giveaway.
Yeah. Awesome. But yeah, so like in terms of consumer habits, right? In a nutshell, like what it looks like is like I said, you forget that importance. And but what I want to do is like how can I like replicate that in-store customer journey? So if we use a supplement example again, what you, like the first thing that they do, and this is just like a very overview example, like if you were to do this exercise, I highly encourage you to break it down into as many steps as possible to really try to understand your customer, right? So the first thing they do, obviously, like walking down the aisle, and that's like discovery visibility stage, and then they're looking at the shelf, and this is where they're looking at the initial selection. So we don't have to worry about that. That's kind of like the search results page does that for us, right? And that's
Yeah.
where ads come in. That's where your main image comes in. That's not what we're talking about today, right? What we're talking about today is what do they do after they get to the shelf? So
Mhm.
is the first thing they do a comparison? Like, is the first thing they do get picking up, like for example, two vitamin D's with that are from two different companies, and looking at the IU, like so that's just the measuring unit of both, and seeing okay which one has a higher IU, and then is the second thing they do they flip the bottle, and then do they flip the bottle again and come back and read like are they looking for organic now, and then like how many times are they like turning the bottle like around front and back, how many times are they comparing between the competitors, what are they comparing, what order are they kind of like looking at, what's kind of important, right? I encourage you like walk down the aisle of your store if you're in the supplement, if you're in supplements, right? See what the interaction is, kind of try to like as a customer, even what I did before for one of my products is like I actually went to the store and I saw one person purchasing that product and I asked them, walk me through your journey, right? Go
Mhm.
out there. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to do market research. You could go in and just do your own preliminary research because you're putting things together, right? To try to understand what your customer is thinking, right? Okay, anyway, so there's many steps that can happen in between, but the whole goal is you want to understand what that journey is. Then I put here, as for sake of time, the next step I put was expert opinion, right? So that gives us like, do they care about expert opinions, right? Do they care about opinions in general, right? For products like this, okay, so then that signals to me, okay, I need UGC content then, right? I need people talking about my product, right? So just figuring out like what those steps are essentially. And then number five is, I shouldn't have put five because it's relevant at all stages. What are the senses, right? Because when you're in the store, right, and you're in person, there's different senses you're engaging, right? Touch and sight and hearing and smell. Like, which ones do I have to bring to life on Amazon, right? So for example, like, and I'll quickly go through these, right? When it comes to like touch, right? There's like a product like, so for example, like let's say you're selling a mattress topper, right? Or a pillow, right? Or something, you can emulate that, right? Like that's something like an image like this, right? Where people can, if you know they're gonna go and touch that pillow, you know they're gonna go and touch that
Mhm.
foam topper, you have to showcase it, right? You can
Lovely.
also you can also showcase things like on a graph, like in an infographic like this, because let's say you're buying bed sheets, right? And my whole life, I never really thought bed sheets were really that serious. I just accepted what I from wherever I got it from. But when my wife and I were like shopping around for our new house when we first got married, she was telling me about like bedsheet thread counts and stuff, right? And anyways, there's a whole world of people who care about that, right? Obviously, that goes back to the language and the thought process. If you're selling like bedsheets at a cheap price, don't waste. You don't. Maybe people don't really care about thread counts. Maybe that will you're marketing to the old me. But me, the new me, I'm gonna care about the higher thread count. So I'm willing to pay more, but I want to hear like don't put a higher premium price if you're not talking about the thread count, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can't showcase thread count and stuff like visually online. So you can do infographics, some things like this, right? Again, when it comes to like banana flour, like this is another type of product, right? Like on the left side, on the right side over here, actually, um, I kind of like I went into like this is even this shows it goes to show you it's even really relevant on the Amazon side because like for this product it was a client that we're working with, and we went and we did this market research in the store. We asked the customers online. We did focus groups and stuff, and we tried to figure out what people cared about. And you can kind of see texture. Like we got really good grades on like texture, and people really care about that, right? But what we like to showcase the texture, right? Because that's what people really wanted to know. Like this is a different type of flour than they usually buy. They want to kind of see what the texture is, right? But anyway, these are just some ways for touch, and this is the prompt that I use when choosing to buy X product. Which sense is most pivotal to customers after purchase? How do their experiences with the product's sensory attributes or performance influence their satisfaction, right? You can take this and keep tweaking it and also get GPT to give you some ideas and kind of help start your research process, right?
That's
Uh,
amazing.
when it comes to site, this is something that like on the left is a screenshot of H&M's page online, right? And when I'm buying a shirt, when I'm buying clothing, or when women are buying dresses, they oftentimes like if they go into the store, they can see the mannequin wearing whatever, and they can kind of guesstimate the size of the mannequin, like the weight of or the width or whatever of the mannequin, right? So you can kind of visualize better. Online, what you should be doing is simply calling out how tall is your model and what's the sizing of your model. This is a practice done on e-com websites, but I don't see this done on Amazon side of things, right? So it's little
Yeah.
things like that where you can kind of help people emulate the senses. Even when it comes to creams, right? there's I didn't know this as well. My wife learning a lot of new things, right? But there's different types of creams and textures and oily skin and dry skin and combo skins, and they all use different type of creams and textures, right? But so these are things people really care about. And in the store, there's testers, and they can see the testers and feel the testers and whatnot, right? Um, but yeah, so overall, like even when it comes to senses, right, you want to also use those descriptive words, right? When like taste, right? You want to, is it bitter? Is it salty? Is it spicy? Smell, like, is it fresh? Is it floral? Like, so just again, like being really, really aware of the language you're using, because that language is going to help people be able to emulate that sense online, right?
Right.
And
Perfect. Yeah, please go ahead.
well, we'll pause for a second. But yeah, let's go jump into just a quick live review. We're not going to actually, for the sake of time, dive into each listing. But if you go to this listing, for example, it's exactly what I was talking about, right? There's no mention on like, so this is a foam and spring hybrid mattress, right? They
Mhm.
could potentially increase their sales simply by talking about the touch. Like there's no mention, no visuals on how comfortable is this, right? And because really when you're buying a mattress or whatnot in a store, you can kind of sleep on it, you can touch it, no
Mhm.
mention. On
Yeah.
the right hand side, when you look at like this nail, like kind of nail polish set or whatnot, they're missing the mark on sort of like different skin tones, right? You can kind of only see one skin tone, right? But
Mhm.
colors look very different on different skin tones, right? So
Fair.
in the store, you can kind of use a tester. You can visually look at it, put it by your skin, right? Little things like that make a big difference. And I think I love to do this type of thing and these type of audits. There's my number down there. You can text me your ASIN and I'll do a free audit for you, like go through it with you and give you free feedback there. But I love to dive into these things. So that's kind of like how do you emulate the retail experience?
That is literally the first time I have heard about second and third image in such detail. I can tell you, and I've been in this space, Muhammad, for since 2017. I mean, you do the math. I think this is the first time ever. So thank you so much for getting into the detail. Now I have another question, and I'm going to put the screen off. But my question to you is, see, I'm a PPC person, so I love data, right? Now this is a very very qualitative analysis. I mean, going through a lot of brainstorming, going through a lot of discussions to come up with what really works. Now, tell me a quantitative way that we can, does Amazon give us some data? Like, what is the quantitative way of figuring out whether our content is a good content or not? I mean, of course, people can come and talk to you, or they can just figure out whether there is something wrong with
Yeah.
their listing, or if they can, what should they be improving, right? So, what is
Ex-
a quantitative way of figuring the same out, and how can customers go about it?
Yeah, no, really great question. And it's super important, right? So like everything that you're doing to this point, like what we talked about, is that brainstorming, right? Is getting all of the information together. Then my next step is always running polling, it is running online focus groups, right? This is where you can really get that data, right? That is where you can really look at it and say, like, oftentimes you always hear, go do polling for your main image, do the same for your like secondary images as well, right? Like
Yeah.
do and I always do it for a lot of our clients, right? And you get interesting data. Sometimes like people actually want the opposite, complete opposite, right? And that's where the data comes in, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so definitely, I think I would recommend everybody, like there's different softwares out there. There's plenty of softwares out there. One big thing that I started to do in the last 2 years is running focus groups online. There's some softwares and tools online that you can run actual focus
Can you
groups.
name some tools just for the audience? I mean, we're not
Yeah.
Indian. No.
So for polling and stuff, I use PickFu and IntelliV, right?
Hmm.
For focus groups, I don't have their name on me right now, but we will share it somewhere in the link down
Sure.
below with the team, but with the audience. And yeah, so definitely those are ways that I get and validate my data.
That's lovely. Awesome. Okay, so now let's move to point number two, which is again very data, Amazon data to figure out about your content quality. So, do you want to
Yeah,
take us?
and
Yeah.
exactly. Awesome. So we'll share screen quickly again. I'll leave this up here if you guys can take a quick screenshot, but this is some more chat GBT prompts that I use to try to get more information about the retail experience, right? And yeah, AI has been really great in trying to get you. So when it comes to Amazon tools, right, to level up your money shots, like what I mean by that is like first, again, everyone stop and this is a game changing Google Chrome extension, right?
Okay.
Um, and I hope we can get this presentation to the viewers so they can
Sure.
go and download whatever. But the way this extension works in a nutshell is basically it gives you the opportunity to download your search query performance report into a CSV file so that you can upload it and manipulate it, right? And you can download it in like you can download it by ASINs. You can group ASINs together. You can separate it. You can download multiple quarters together. So it basically gives you a lot more functionality, and it's free. And not many
Wow.
people heard about it. So definitely, like this changes the game for me when it comes to my research in it beyond
What is
images,
it
even
called?
for keywords for advertising.
What is the extension called?
Sellers Central Utilities, yes.
Okay, perfect. This is amazing. Seller Central Utilities, and it's a free extension.
Yeah, it's a free extension.
Okay, and it
I'm
basically
no way
so if I
affiliated with
want,
them. Pardon? Sorry?
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm no way affiliated with them. It's just something that my team and I use on a daily basis.
Got it.
Really cool tool, and this link is a direct link to the Google Chrome store.
Okay. And if I want to look at my data on a week on week basis or day on day basis, sorry, a week on week or month on month basis, would I be able to do that in this extension?
Yeah, you can update the reporting ranges and such as well.
Lovely. All right, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so like really like I don't want to spend too much time just for the sake of time, but what I like to do is like you want to filter for different things, click through, cart ad rates, purchase rates. Like your whole goal is like you want to identify like super specific long tail keywords that are doing well, like depending on whatever metric, obviously, and then identify the language of your top converting customers, and then you focus on that. So, like, let me put it into context, right? We did this for one product, right? And when we tried to, and I think we filtered this through click through, I forget, but anyways, whatever we filtered it for, one thing we started to notice for the long tail keywords were people like were searching extra long, long mid thigh, extra long, extra long
Mhm.
layering, long layering. So what this helped us kind of understand was that one, we saw that this brand did not have any sufficient content to illustrate its size, right? Even though it's a significant thing that when it comes to purchase decision, right? This is what the customers what they're thinking in because we know they're thinking in this because they're searching this, right?
Yeah,
And so what we did, well, this is not our image. This is just an image from Google, but it's just I want to give an example of how you can apply it, right? If you were just to get like if this brand was just to kind of, and this is something we're working with them on right now, is get an image like this, right, and show our customers we're sitting over here, right, as opposed to it. Now we, because we're a long, our product main keyword is long tank top, right? But
Mhm.
many of our actual customers that are converting for extra long tank top as well, right? So we
Mhm.
just want to show them that we are a long tank top. Like, so like we're sitting like over here, right? Wherever we're sitting, right? So again, this takes the thinking out of it because it's something that clearly that they're thinking in. Again, it goes back to what is our customers thinking, right? And what is that language they're thinking in? And how do we translate that onto images 2 and 3, right? And give them that information quickly without them having to beg for it or search for it, right?
Fair enough. And I think this is, this is again the first time that I'm looking at data, for content. So one of the main issues that we always have, the content people and the PPC people, they have, they're not able to meet together in one place is because, content doesn't talk data and PPC doesn't talk quality, so I think this is a pretty good way of bringing both of those teams together on one place. I think it's brilliant.
Exactly. Um,
Lovely. Mhm.
Yeah, and then we can kind of apply like, and again, we did the same thing for like this other brand that we're working for. And again, it's just finding like what are those commonalities, right? Like baking flour for baking. So anyways, green banana flour has many use cases. It can actually be used for smoothies and whatnot, and you don't really need to bake it. But people were looking for a lot of like flour substitutes, and we knew that, right? But one thing now, what this led us to was, okay, if they really care a lot about like baking and they're what we went, and now what question, the question that we're going to answer is, okay, how do you use this product when it comes to baking? So if you look on this on Google, for example, and you Google like, banana flour for baking, people ask, you can get the questions that people commonly ask on Google, right? So what is the ratio for gluten-free baking? What is the ratio of baking flour? So a big question that people are asking, thinking about, even off Amazon, is the ratio, because when you're using banana flour or any alternative flour, it's not one to one a lot of the times, right? So it's like maybe a half a cup equals 1 cup of flour, right? So you have to like either reduce or add more because for it to work the same as flour essentially. So
Yeah.
again, this product, like this brand, we weren't doing that, right? So it's like, how do we now implement that, right? And actually go in and answer these questions, essentially, right? But yeah, that's a little bit about like one way to leverage the Search Career Performance Report. And when it comes to like now the demographic reports, right? Like this is, I like to share this story always, right? Um, basically we're working with this like fertility brand, right? And they sold men and women's fertility supplements, right? So before our team took over, the client's like second to third, fourth image was focused a lot on speaking like directly to men, right? But what was interesting is that when you look at the data, you'll actually find that over like the demographics tool on Amazon, you'll find that 80% of their customers were women, right? So in its fact, you can find that maybe it's their spouse or someone in their life purchasing it for them, right? So once we change the language now to talk about, it takes two to tango, and we started to spark like an emotional reaction from kind of like women, our conversion rate went up by like 30% within like 30
Oh,
days,
wow.
right?
Wow.
So just things about like that, like how do you like leverage these tools? And there's so many different tools Amazon has that you can like leverage. And I always love to share this story because it's like you thought it's like we automatically thought it's a men's product, men are gonna buy it. Okay, let's kind of market to them. But in fact, it wasn't, right? So always look at your data, right? Um, and this is something we were talking about a couple of days ago about how now AI can also interpret images. There's a shift in how we have to approach content creation. So like we were talking about how like Amazon's algorithm is already looking at images. It's already
Yeah,
studying images, right? And it's already potentially looking at how our images are relating to our product, and they can maybe draw that connection as to where we should be placed and where we should be ranked, which keyword we should be ranking for, right? So
yeah,
maybe also we need to focus on making sure our demographic is represented in those images, right?
absolutely.
It's not so that it makes sense to the algorithm as well. Not just like, because I know like obviously we want to like make images for human centric people as well, the humans on the other end, right? But again, it's about being mindful of what the algorithm is also understanding of your product. And oftentimes we only used to focus on writing copies for the
Yeah,
algorithm, the algorithm when it came to for the copywriting, but images as well is something that people don't consider, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
So yeah, that's where it comes. So the next thing the final piece of the puzzle, right, of the recipe, if you want to call it, is the psychology thing. And this stuff is this is a whole podcast on its own, right? With multiple episodes and seasons, right? But we'll just kind of dive into a little snippet of it, right? So when it comes to psychology, right, there's this one interesting thing that is done online. It's called the eye tracking, um, a human eye tracking, right? When websites are being developed and landing pages are being developed, right? You'll even see like LinkedIn, for example. If you look at LinkedIn's homepage, they're sort of set up in this like F pattern, if you really like look at it, right? And the reason that they do that, they spend a lot of like these big companies spend thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars on research as to like where the human eye is like starting and ending, and what will lead to better conversion, right? Same, I always say the same principle applies on your second and third images as well, right? Like these are the same humans that are signing up for LinkedIn, right? Or signing up for that landing page offer, right? So you want to test A/B test using the managed by experiment tools or whatever tool, like the polling or whatever you want, whatever different way you want to test it. But you want to essentially figure out like how move information around, right? Put like follow the F pattern, follow the Z pattern. There's many other different patterns, but it's definitely something to think about, something to research, so that and figure out ways to apply it. Because again, really looking at your stuff at a glance, right? So it's super important that the glance that they are looking at it, you, they see the most important pieces of your content, right?
yeah,
And it's a small image, right? Like you don't want to lose them. And like one thing that I always see people doing is they'll add a picture of the product in every single image. Come on, man. Like people know what the product is. They came in through the main image. They know what the product looks like, right? So
yeah,
you take so much real estate on your image, always adding a big picture of the product always. And now it's like, there's maybe their eyes are starting there. And you've lost maybe 25% of the information on the sheet that they're going to ignore now, right?
yeah.
Something to consider there. Again, color theory, I won't get into this. This is often talked about, but it's a very real thing, right? Colors invoke emotions. It's not just people often like, when you work with people on Fiverr or you work with people, even your own in-house designers, they often focus on picking colors for readability or colors for branding, which are two important things. But the you have to balance the whole color theory, right? Like companies like McDonald's and Google, all these companies spend again hundreds of thousands of dollars of making sure they're invoking the right emotion from you, right? So
Yeah.
something to really think about. And then emotional connections, right? Like what are triggers? Like this is the fertility brand that I just talked about, right? For the trigger was like the woman feeling the fertility pressure just being on her, right? So
Mhm.
when you kind of took that pressure off of her by using that language, it can help lead to better conversion. So it's like, think about what is those emotional triggers, right? For hair oils, for another example, like, if someone has alopecia, right? Showing that before and after, right? And showing them someone that was struggling like you, right? And them seeing them on the other side, that's a trigger, right? So how can you invoke those connections, invoke those emotions, right? Um, and this part is not related to your second and third image. What I want to talk about, and I'm not going to go through this whole blur, but all this essentially means this is some psychological principle of familiarity and consistency. Where I think this is relevant is your customers are on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. End of the day, they're shopping on Amazon, right? One thing
Yeah.
that brands forget is that they're on Amazon and there's certain things they're used to. They're used to the orange buttons, they're used to Amazon fonts, they're used to Amazon layouts, right? So oftentimes brands come in and they place so much importance on their brand identity, brand coloring, brand all of this. And this is an example that I always love to use. If you go on your brand store, I always see this. I always see people posting like these little images and they have shop collection. It's like and to denote that you can click it and it's like a clickable image, right?
Yeah.
Change those colors to the Amazon colors, watch your store conversion rate go up because it goes back to that psychological principle of what they're used to, what they're familiar with, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't want to break that chain of thought, right? So it's like they're on Amazon.com, they're on this platform. Now if I'm on this brand's like page and I'm like, oh, I see orange, I'm like, oh, buy now, oh, shop now. Like I know meant without even thinking, I know what that is supposed to do. When I look at this image now, I have to think. So basically, what you want to do is, how do I make my customer not think, right? And do
Reduce
all.
cognitive load.
Pardon?
Reduce cognitive load.
Exactly, exactly, right?
Mhm.
I shared on this presentation as well, like all the color codes and the height of the buttons, right? Like even like I've tested this before, right? Using the exact pixel, the exact height, right? Things like that are super important, right? But just keep a note again, like Amazon changes all of these, like they're always testing, like they're not changing the main orange, but they're always testing like different variations of sizes and whatnot. But end of the day, I wanted to share this here. um, but yeah, like that was kind of it on my end. These were just some essentially just some snippets of what we do and what our recipe is, right? It's sort of like, and if I was to go back to the front over here, right? It goes back to three steps that could be broken down into 100, right?
Yeah.
It depends how granular you want to get. It just depends how deep you want to dive into it. Always test the data though. Always do some focus groups and polling. Like always try to validate your data. But really, I think people don't spend enough time on their content, right? Essentially, they're not
Yeah.
spending
No, absolutely.
that deep into things.
I think they spend time now. They've started spending time on, some of the, the main image or premium plus content. But I think this was just brand new information that came out today in terms of how you can even utilize your second and third image to actually increase your conversion. So I think brilliant conversation today. Very fresh content. Very interesting tools that you talked about, very great, very useful frameworks that you talked about. So I think it's a pretty holistic information about, or actually more than holistic, just complete information about how to present your second and third image in a way that you can increase your conversions. More than that, we've already talked about case studies in today's conversation. So I don't think there's anything left in terms of how someone can prep for their second and third image. And just to kind of summarize, right, we talked about three main things. One was how to bring your retail experience of how the customer interacts with your retail, in the retail world, to your Amazon, pages. What is how does the customer interact with your brand? How does with your product, and then how do you bring that on your second and third image? The second thing we talked about was, don't just look at qualitative. You look at data. What is the customer searching for? What is the customer trying to look for when they're looking at your content, and then incorporate those keywords not only in your bullet points and FAQs, but also in your product image. Just like we talked about that extra long tank top, right? Show them in the form of an image that this is what an extra long means. Are we extra long or are we short? Whatever, right? And I think this is becoming more and more important as AI comes in, and Amazon is going to start using AI for search, because now AI is going to read what is there in an image, and it will be able to respond to a customer's query basis that. So I think excellent point there. And I think the last one that you talked about, which is consumer psychology, which is what is the customer really expecting? If they're on an Amazon site, make your images and make your brand store very very similar to the to the Amazon's font, Amazon's colors, actionable colors, for example the orange color. I think this excellent points on how people can improve little things to improve on their content and really increase their conversion. So really, thank you so much, Mohammed. I think I learned a lot today. Anything that you want to add?
No, no, thank you for having me on. I think like all I want to add is like I want like this is something that like my team and I are gonna dive deeper into, and I want to get more research into this, and like I want to see a lot more people speaking on this. Definitely, it is something that like one thing I would say is like, and I'm talking to brand owners right now.
Yeah.
Don't just give your images to like a freelancer, an agency, or even your in-house designer without setting like the right expectations, right? You want to also like try to understand the why behind the what for each image,
Yeah.
right? Challenge your designers on and your marketers on why are we placing this here as opposed to here, right? Because
Yeah.
each spot matters, right? And no, definitely, I love talking about this stuff. I could do this all day, and I love going on a listing and diving into it. So anyone who wants to do that, like you, can definitely reach out for that.
Absolutely. I'm going to put in your LinkedIn and the information that you talked about in the comment section. And I think the presentation is something that we could put in as an attachment. But thank you so much, Mohammed. I think it was a very enlightening talk. And I don't think we'll ever have such a fresh, just like very, very fresh opinion on something less talked about. So thank you again. And thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around. This was one of our longer sessions, but I think every single minute of it was worth it. And thank you for sticking around. And we're going to be back next week with a new guest and a lot of new learnings. Until then, happy advertising.